The fog rolled in from Penobscot Bay like a guilty conscience, thick and suffocating, wrapping around our house on Blueberry Road like it was trying to hide something. Which, as it turned out, it was. I stood in my driveway at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, watching the mist swallow the streetlights one by one, and wondered when my life had become a Stephen King novel. The only thing missing was a haunted car or a rabid dog. What I had instead was a cheating wife and her smug ex-boyfriend camping out in my guest room. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Lucas, you're letting all the heat out," Maya called from the doorway, her voice carrying that particular edge she'd perfected over our 8 years of marriage. The edge that said, I was being unreasonable for existing. I turned to look at her, this woman I'd loved since college, standing there in her silk pajamas that cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. Her dark hair was perfectly tousled in that way that took her 45 minutes to achieve, and she was holding her phone like it was a lifeline. Which, considering what I'd discovered, it probably was. "Just checking the weather," I said, stepping inside and closing the door. "Looks like it's going to be a nasty week." Maya's laugh was as artificial as the vanilla air freshener she'd started using to cover up the scent of expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "You and your weather obsession. Colin thinks it's charming." Colin Reddick, my boss at Eastport Engineering, my wife's ex-boyfriend from her advertising days in Portland, and currently the unwelcome guest who'd been temporarily staying in our spare room for 3 weeks while he looked for a place. 3 weeks of watching him swagger around my house in his designer suits, drinking my coffee, and making himself comfortable in ways that were becoming increasingly obvious. "Where is Colin tonight?" I asked, hanging my jacket on the hook by the door. I noticed his BMW wasn't in the driveway when I got home. He had a late meeting with some clients from Boston. He'll be back soon. Maya's fingers tightened around her phone. "You know how demanding his schedule is." I knew exactly how demanding Colin's schedule was. After all, I was the one who managed the project timelines for his division. And according to the schedule I'd reviewed that afternoon, Colin hadn't had any client meetings scheduled for today, or this week for that matter. "Right," I said, walking toward the kitchen. "I'll make some coffee. Long day tomorrow." As I measured out the coffee grounds, I listened to Maya's footsteps on the stairs, followed by the soft click of our bedroom door. Then, a few minutes later, the sound of running water from our shower. She'd started taking a lot of showers lately, always right after Colin left the house. The coffee maker gurgled to life, and I pulled out my phone to check the app I'd installed 3 days ago. The smart home security system had been Maya's idea, actually. She'd suggested it after Mrs. Givens next door had mentioned some package thefts in the neighborhood. "We should be more careful about security," Maya had said, "especially with Colin staying here. He has expensive equipment for work." What Maya didn't know was that I'd included a discreet camera in the guest room setup. Perfectly legal, since it was my house and the camera was clearly visible on the dresser. I'd even mentioned it to both of them. "Just want to make sure we can monitor any deliveries that come to the front door," I'd explained. "The camera has a wide-angle view of the whole downstairs area." They'd both nodded and agreed it was a smart precaution. I opened the app and scrolled back to earlier that evening, around 8 o'clock, when I'd been stuck late at the Millfield construction site dealing with a concrete delivery problem. The timestamp showed 8:47 p.m. when Maya and Colin entered the guest room together. They were laughing about something, standing closer than necessary. Maya was wearing the red dress she'd bought last month, the one she'd said was for special occasions. At 8:52 p.m., Colin's hands were in Maya's hair. At 8:58 p.m., they were kissing like teenagers. At 9:15 p.m., Maya was unbuttoning Colin's shirt. I closed the app and poured myself a cup of coffee, noting with detached interest that my hands weren't shaking. 8 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. Not with a fight or a gradual growing apart, but with high-definition video evidence of my wife screwing my boss in the room where my grandmother's antique quilt was displayed on the wall. The irony wasn't lost on me. Maya had always complained that I was too predictable, too boring, too focused on practical things like engineering tolerances and construction schedules. She'd wanted more excitement, more spontaneity, more passion. Well, she'd certainly found it. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie Driscoll, the project coordinator I'd been working with on the Millfield site. We'd been grabbing coffee occasionally after work, nothing serious, just two people who enjoyed each other's company and shared a mutual appreciation for sarcasm and good bourbon. Hope you got the concrete issue sorted. Want to grab lunch tomorrow? I have some thoughts about Maya's behavior lately that you might want to hear. Sophie had never liked Maya, which I'd always attributed to professional jealousy. Sophie was straightforward, competent, and had no patience for what she called manipulative games. Maya was charming, beautiful, and had a talent for making everyone around her feel like they were the most important person in the room, until they weren't useful anymore. I texted back, "Lunch sounds good, and Sophie, you were right about Maya." I hate being right about things like this, but we'll talk tomorrow. I finished my coffee and headed upstairs, pausing outside the guest room door. I could hear Colin's voice through the thin walls, talking quietly on the phone. Probably to his wife, Karen, who lived in their expensive house in Camden and had no idea her husband was spending his evenings playing house with his ex-girlfriend. Maya was already in bed when I entered our room, pretending to read a magazine. She looked up with a smile that would have fooled me a week ago. "How was your day, honey? You seemed stressed when you got home." "Just the usual construction headaches," I said, pulling off my work shirt. "Nothing that can't be solved with proper planning and attention to detail." "You're so good at solving problems," Maya said, her voice carrying a note I couldn't quite identify. "I've always admired that about you." I looked at her in the mirror as I brushed my teeth. She was watching me with an expression I'd seen before, usually when she was trying to gauge whether I suspected something. The same look she'd had when I'd caught her in smaller lies over the years. The girls' night out that turned out to be dinner with her ex-coworker. The work conference that had no record of her attendance. The shopping trip that produced no bags and a story that changed every time she told it. "Maya," I said, turning to face her, "is there anything you want to tell me?" For a moment, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. Then the mask slipped back into place, and she gave me her brightest smile. "Just that I love you, and I'm glad we have Colin here to help with expenses. It's nice having someone around who appreciates what we've built together." I nodded and climbed into bed, turning off the lamp on my side. In the darkness, I listened to Maya's breathing gradually slow as she fell asleep. Then, I quietly retrieved my phone and opened the security app again. The guest room was dark now, but the night vision showed two figures in the bed that was supposed to be Colin's temporary accommodation. They were curled together like they'd been sleeping in the same bed for years. I screenshotted the image, saved it to a secure folder, and began planning my next move. Maya wanted excitement and passion. Colin wanted to play house with someone else's wife. I was about to give them both more excitement than they'd bargained for. The next morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that only follows a heavy fog, as if the weather was mocking the murky situation inside my house. I was up at 5:30, my usual time, and had coffee brewing before either of my house guests stirred. Colin appeared first, looking remarkably well-rested for someone who'd supposedly had late client meetings. His hair was shower damp, and he was wearing one of those expensive casual shirts that cost more than I made in a day. "Morning, Lucas," he said, helping himself to coffee like he owned the place. "Thanks for letting me crash here another night. I should have news about an apartment soon." No rush, I said, spreading peanut butter on my toast with deliberate precision. Take all the time you need. I'm sure Maya enjoys having you around. Colin's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. She's been very accommodating. You're lucky to have such a generous wife. Generous, that's one word for it. Maya chose that moment to make her entrance, wearing yoga pants and a fitted top that showed off the figure she maintained with religious devotion to her gym membership. She kissed my cheek with the same casual affection she'd shown me for months, then squeezed Colin's shoulder as she passed behind his chair. "Sleep well?" she asked him, and I had to admire her acting skills. "Like a baby," Colin replied. "That guest room bed is incredibly comfortable." "I'm so glad," Maya said, pouring herself coffee. "Lucas picked out that mattress. He's very particular about comfort and quality." I looked up from my toast to find them both watching me with identical expressions of casual interest. Like they were waiting to see if I'd noticed anything unusual, like they were testing me. "Speaking of quality," I said, "I've been thinking about upgrading our home security system. Maybe add a few more cameras, improve the monitoring capabilities. You can never be too careful these days." Maya's hand tightened almost imperceptibly around her coffee mug. "Do we really need more security? The system we have seems adequate." "Oh, the current system is working perfectly," I said. "Better than I expected, actually. Very clear picture quality, excellent night vision. I was reviewing the footage yesterday, and I was impressed by how much detail it captures." Colin set down his coffee cup with a sharp clink. "You review the security footage?" "Just spot-checking to make sure everything's working properly. Professional habit, I guess. I like to verify that systems perform according to specifications." I finished my toast and stood up. "I should get going. Early meeting with the Millfield client." "I thought your Millfield meeting was this afternoon," Maya said. I paused at the kitchen door. "No, that's the site inspection. The client meeting is at 8, but don't worry about my schedule, honey. I know you have your own busy day planned." Maya's smile was strained. "Of course. I have that presentation for the Morrison account, and then lunch with Jenna and Tara. Jenna Walsh and Tara Brennan, Maya's closest friends and biggest enablers. They'd spent years encouraging Maya's sense of entitlement and assuring her that she deserved better than her boring engineer husband. I wondered how they'd react when they learned what their friend had been up to. "Give them my regards," I said. "I'm sure they'll be very interested in what you've been up to lately." I left them both staring after me and drove to the office, where I had 2 hours before anyone else arrived. 2 hours to do some research and make some plans. The first call I made was to Sophie. "You're up early," she said by way of greeting. "Please tell me you have good news about the concrete situation." "The concrete is fine. It's my personal life that's turned into a construction disaster." I filled her in on what I'd discovered, keeping my voice level and factual. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry, Lucas. I know this has to be devastating. Actually, I'm more angry than devastated, and I'm planning to do something about it." "What kind of something?" "The kind that makes sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with. Maya thinks I'm predictable. Colin thinks he can walk into my house and take whatever he wants. They're about to learn that they don't know me as well as they think they do. Lucas, be careful. I know you're hurt, but don't do anything that could come back to bite you legally or professionally. Everything I'm planning is completely legal and professionally appropriate. I'm just going to make sure the truth comes to light in the most public and humiliating way possible." My second call was to Jim Perry, the HR director at Eastport Engineering. Jim and I had worked together for 6 years, and he'd always struck me as a man who took company policy seriously. "Jim, I need to schedule a meeting with you about a potential conflict of interest situation involving Colin Reddick." "What kind of conflict of interest?" "The kind that involves inappropriate relationships with subordinates' family members and potential misuse of company resources. I have documentation." "How soon can you be here?" "Give me an hour." The third call was to my lawyer, David Chen, who'd handled the legal work when Maya and I bought the house. "David, I need to know my rights regarding divorce proceedings and property division in Maine, and I need to know them quickly. Lucas, what's going on? Maya's been having an affair. I have video evidence. I want to know how to protect myself and my assets before this gets ugly. Come in this afternoon. Bring everything you have. By the time I finished my calls, I had a clear timeline. HR meeting at 9, lunch with Sophie at noon, lawyer at 3. Maya's presentation to the Morrison account was at 10, followed by lunch with her friends at 1. Colin had a project review meeting at 11. Perfect timing for what I had planned. I opened my laptop and began preparing a comprehensive file of evidence. Screenshots from the security footage, timestamps, a detailed log of Maya's suspicious behavior over the past month. I also pulled Colin's expense reports and travel records, noting several discrepancies that would be of interest to HR. At 8:45, I sent an anonymous email to Colin Reddick, Colin's wife, with a single security camera screenshot and a brief message. Thought you should know where your husband spent last night. At 8:50, I forwarded the same image to Jenna Walsh and Tara Brennan with the message, Ask Maya about her house guest. At 8:55, I sent a copy to Maya's boss at the advertising agency where she worked, along with a note about potential conflicts of interest with client accounts. Then I walked into Jim Perry's office and laid out everything I had. Jim reviewed the evidence with the grim expression of a man who'd seen too many workplace scandals. This is a serious situation, Lucas. Colin's position gives him authority over your career, which makes this relationship highly inappropriate, even if you weren't married to the woman involved. What happens now? I'll need to conduct a formal investigation. Colin will be suspended pending the outcome. And Lucas? I'm sorry this happened to you, but I'm glad you brought it to my attention. This kind of behavior can't be tolerated. I left the HR office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Phase 1 was complete. My phone was buzzing with messages by the time I reached my car. 3 missed calls from Maya, 2 from Colin, and a text from Sophie. Holy shit, Lucas. Jenna Walsh just called Maya crying. What did you do? I texted back. Just shared some interesting home security footage. Want to grab that lunch early? I have a feeling my afternoon is going to be very busy. As I drove toward the restaurant where Sophie was waiting, my phone rang again. Maya's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time in weeks, I was actually looking forward to talking to my wife. This was going to be fun. I let Maya's call go to voicemail and listened to it in the restaurant parking lot while Sophie waited inside. Lucas, we need to talk, right now. I don't know what you think you saw, but there's been a misunderstanding. Call me back immediately. Her voice had the sharp edge of panic, barely controlled. Good. Sophie was already seated when I walked in, and her expression told me she'd been fielding calls too. This is insane, she said as I sat down. Jenna Walsh called me 20 minutes ago, crying and screaming about how you'd sent her some kind of compromising photo of Maya. She wanted to know if I was involved in Lucas's sick revenge plot. What did you tell her? That I didn't know what she was talking about, but if Maya was stupid enough to get caught cheating, that was her problem, not yours. Sophie leaned forward. Lucas, what exactly did you send these people? I pulled out my phone and showed her the security footage screenshot. Sophie's eyes widened. Jesus Christ! That's definitely Maya and Colin, and they're definitely not discussing work projects. Nope. This was taken last night at 9:15, while I was dealing with concrete delivery problems at Millfield. Maya told me Colin was at a client meeting in Boston. How long has this been going on? Based on the security footage I've reviewed, at least 2 weeks, probably longer. I put my phone away as the waitress approached. I've already been to HR. Colin's been suspended pending investigation. Sophie ordered a salad she probably wouldn't eat, and I asked for a burger I definitely would. Revenge, I was discovering, gave me an appetite. What's your endgame here? Sophie asked after the waitress left. Because if you're planning to destroy them both publicly, you're off to a hell of a start. My endgame is making sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with. Maya's spent years presenting herself as the perfect wife, the victim of a boring marriage to a predictable man. Her friends have spent years telling her she deserves better. Well, now they get to see what better looks like. My phone buzzed with another call from Maya. I declined it and immediately received a text. "Answer your phone now." I showed the text to Sophie, who snorted. "She's really not in a position to make demands, is she?" "No, she's not. But she hasn't figured that out yet." The next text came from Colin. "We need to meet. This is getting out of hand." I replied, "Can't meet today. I'm busy with HR meetings and legal consultations. Maybe tomorrow, if you're not too busy looking for a new job." Sophie nearly choked on her water. "You're enjoying this." "I really am. For the first time in months, I feel like I'm in control of my own life." My phone rang again, and this time it was a number I didn't recognize. "Lucas Harper? This is Colin Reddick, Colin's wife. I think we need to talk." "Interesting. What can I do for you, Karen?" "You can tell me where you got that photograph you sent me this morning." "It's from my home security system. The timestamp shows it was taken last night around 9:15. There was a long pause. "I see. And how long has this been going on?" "Based on the evidence I have, at least 2 weeks, possibly longer." "Evidence?" "Video footage, timestamps, documentation of lies and cover stories. I've been keeping detailed records." Another pause. "Would you be willing to share that evidence with me? For divorce proceedings?" "Absolutely. I think we're going to be very helpful to each other, Karen." After I hung up, Sophie was staring at me with something approaching awe. "You've been planning this, haven't you? This isn't a spur-of-the-moment reaction. You've been setting them up." "I've been documenting their behavior and preparing to protect myself legally. If that counts as setting them up, then yes." "Lucas, I'm impressed, and a little scared of you." "Good. Maya always said I was too predictable. I'm looking forward to showing her how wrong she was." We were interrupted by the arrival of Jenna Walsh, Maya's best friend and biggest enabler. She stormed over to our table with the righteous fury of someone who'd never been held accountable for anything in her life. "How dare you?" she said, loud enough to attract attention from nearby tables. "How dare you violate Maya's privacy like that?" I looked up at her calmly. "I'm sorry, Jenna. Are you talking about the security footage from my own house? The cameras that both Maya and Colin knew about and consented to? You know what I'm talking about. That disgusting photo you sent me." "Oh, you mean the photo of my wife having connection with another man in my guest room? I can see how that would be upsetting. It was pretty upsetting for me, too." Jenna's face flushed red. "Maya said you'd try to twist this around, make it seem like she's the bad guy. She said you've been emotionally abusive for years, controlling and manipulative." Sophie laughed out loud. "Emotionally abusive? Maya's been cheating on him with his boss in his own house, and he's the abusive one?" "You don't understand their relationship," Jenna snapped. "Maya's been unhappy for years. Lucas never paid attention to her, never made her feel appreciated. So naturally the solution was to sleep with his boss," I said pleasantly. "That makes perfect sense." Several people at nearby tables were now openly staring, and Jenna seemed to realize she was making a scene. She lowered her voice but lost none of the venom. "Maya wants to work this out. She wants to save her marriage, but not if you keep humiliating her like this." "Maya wants to work this out?" I repeated. "That's interesting, because last night she was working Colin out, if you know what I mean." Jenna's mouth fell open. Sophie started laughing so hard she had to put her napkin over her face. "You're disgusting," Jenna said. "No, Jenna. What's disgusting is spending 8 years married to someone who lies to your face every day while her friends encourage her to cheat. What's disgusting is having your boss move into your house and screw your wife while you're working late to pay for their lifestyle. What's disgusting is being told I should be grateful for the opportunity to work things out with someone who has so little respect for me that she couldn't even bother to get a hotel room." I stood up, pulling out my wallet to leave money for lunch. But you know what's really disgusting, Jenna? The fact that you knew. You and Tara both knew what Maya was doing, and you encouraged her. You told her she deserved better, that she should follow her heart, that she shouldn't settle for a boring life with a predictable man. Jenna's face went white. You never what? Never told Maya she was too good for me? Never suggested she should find someone more exciting? Never helped her justify lying to me? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile, because I have text messages that suggest otherwise. Maya screenshot some of your conversations and sent them to Colin. He left his phone unlocked in my kitchen yesterday morning. It was a lie, but Jenna didn't know that. Her expression told me I'd hit close enough to the truth to make her panic. I think you should leave now, Sophie said quietly, before Lucas decides to share some of those text messages with your husband. Jenna fled without another word. Sophie looked at me with admiration. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Too late for that advice to help Maya and Colin, I said. But don't worry. I only destroy people who try to destroy me first. My phone buzzed with yet another call from Maya. This time I answered. Hello, sweetheart. How's your day going? Lucas, please, we need to talk, face to face. I can explain everything. I'm sure you can. You've always been good at explanations. Remember when you explained why you needed to work late 3 nights in a row last week? Or when you explained why Colin's cologne was on your blouse? Please don't do this. Don't destroy our marriage over a mistake. Maya, our marriage was destroyed the moment you brought another man into our bed. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. I hung up and turned off my phone. Sophie was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. What happens now? She asked. Now I go see my lawyer and make sure I'm protected legally. Then I go home and see what my cheating wife and her boyfriend have to say for themselves. And after that? I smiled, and this time it was genuinely pleasant. After that, we see how much excitement Maya can handle. By the time I finished with my lawyer, it was nearly 5 o'clock, and David Chen had given me everything I needed to proceed with confidence. Maine's divorce laws were straightforward. Adultery was grounds for fault-based divorce, and my evidence was overwhelming. More importantly, the house was in my name only, purchased before our marriage with money I'd inherited from my grandfather. You're in a strong position legally, David had assured me. But Lucas, be smart about this. Don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or intimidation. Document everything, but don't engage in behavior that could backfire on you. Everything I'm planning is completely legal, I'd replied. I'm just going to make sure the truth comes out in the most comprehensive way possible. Now, driving home through the early evening darkness, I was looking forward to the conversation waiting for me. My phone, which I'd turned back on after leaving David's office, showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Maya and Colin had been busy. The BMW was in my driveway when I pulled up, along with a car I didn't recognize. Through the living room window, I could see several figures moving around. It looked like Maya had called in reinforcements. I sat in my truck for a moment, reviewing the security app one more time. The guest room camera showed 2 suitcases on the bed. Colin was packing. The living room camera revealed Maya, Colin, Jenna, Tara, and a man I didn't recognize, all clustered around my coffee table in what appeared to be an intense discussion. Perfect. An audience. I walked into my own house to find 5 people sitting in my living room like they were conducting an intervention. Maya jumped up the moment I appeared. Lucas, thank God. We need to talk about this situation before it gets any more out of hand. Hello, Maya. Colin. Ladies. I nodded to Jenna and Tara, then looked at the unknown man. I don't believe we've met. This is Dr. Martin Reeves, Maya said quickly. He's a marriage counselor. I thought it would be helpful to have a professional perspective on our situation. I looked at Dr. Reeves with interest. He was younger than I'd expected, probably early 40s, with the kind of carefully groomed appearance that suggested expensive tastes. He stood up and extended his hand. "Mr. Harper, I appreciate you agreeing to meet with us." "I didn't agree to anything," I said, not taking his hand. "This is my house, and these people are uninvited guests, except for Colin, who's supposedly a temporary house guest. Though based on the suitcases I can see in the guest room, it looks like that arrangement is coming to an end." Dr. Reeves lowered his hand, looking uncomfortable. "Perhaps we could all sit down and discuss this like adults." "Adults," I repeated. That's an interesting word choice, because adults don't usually sneak around behind their spouse's back, sleeping with their boss in the guest room while their husband is working late to pay the bills. Maya flinched. "Lucas, please, there's no need for that kind of language." "Oh, I'm sorry. Would you prefer more clinical terminology? Adults don't usually engage in extramarital private relationships with their spouse's supervisor in the marital home while maintaining a facade of innocent hospitality." Colin finally spoke up. "Lucas, I know you're angry, but we can work this out. What Maya and I have, it's complicated." "Complicated," I said thoughtfully. "You know what's complicated, Colin? Structural engineering, load calculations, soil composition analysis. What you and Maya have is simple. It's called adultery, and it's about to become very expensive for both of you." "What do you mean expensive?" Dr. Reeves asked. "Well, Colin's already been suspended from his job pending an HR investigation. That's going to impact his ability to pay alimony to his wife Karen, who's filing for divorce tomorrow morning. Maya's boss received some interesting photographs today that are going to make her upcoming performance review very awkward." Maya went pale. "You sent pictures to Richard?" "Just one, but it was very clear and well composed. I have an eye for photography, apparently." Tara, who'd been silent until now, finally exploded. "You're destroying people's lives over a mistake." "I'm not destroying anything," I said calmly. "I'm just sharing information. Maya and Colin destroyed their own lives when they decided to conduct their affair in my house, under my security cameras, while lying to my face every day." "The security cameras were supposed to be for package deliveries," Colin said desperately. "They are, but they're also for security, which includes documenting criminal activity like adultery and trespassing." "Adultery isn't criminal in Maine," Dr. Reeves said. "No, but it is grounds for fault-based divorce, which means Maya won't be entitled to alimony or property division, and trespassing becomes a more serious issue when it's combined with alienation of affection." I was bluffing about the alienation of affection. Maine had abolished that tort years ago, but none of them knew that. Maya started crying, which was a first. In 8 years of marriage, I'd seen her frustrated, angry, and manipulative, but never genuinely upset. It was almost convincing. "Lucas, please. I know I made a mistake, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through our problems. I love you." "Maya, you love the lifestyle I provide. You love the house, the car, the credit cards, the social status of being married to a successful engineer. You don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been screwing my boss in our guest room for the past month." "It wasn't a month," she said quickly, then realized her mistake. "Oh, you're right. Based on the security footage I've reviewed, it's been at least 6 weeks. Thank you for the correction." Colin stood up abruptly. "This is insane. Lucas, you're acting like a crazy person. We're trying to handle this situation maturely." "Maturely," I repeated. "Colin, you moved into my house under false pretenses, seduced my wife, conducted an affair under my roof, and then tried to cover it up with lies and manipulation. If you think that's mature behavior, I'd hate to see what you consider immature." "I never meant for this to happen," Colin said. "Maya and I have history. When we reconnected, old feelings came back. It wasn't planned." "Oh, it was definitely planned. You requested the transfer to my division specifically. You researched Maya's social media before you moved here. You asked to stay in our house instead of getting a hotel. This was all very carefully orchestrated." Colin's face went white. How do you know that? Because I'm good at research, and I've had a very productive day. I know about the background check you ran on me. I know about the private investigator you hired to look into Maya's marriage. I know about the apartment you never actually looked for because you were planning to move in here permanently. It was another bluff, but Colin's expression told me I'd hit close to the truth again. Jenna stood up suddenly. This is ridiculous. Maya, you don't have to listen to this. Lucas is obviously having some kind of breakdown. Actually, I'm having the opposite of a breakdown, I said. I'm having a breakthrough. For the first time in years, I can see my situation clearly. I walked to the front door and opened it. Dr. Reeves, thank you for your concern, but your services won't be needed. Jenna, Tara, this is a private family matter, and you're not family. Colin, you have until tomorrow morning to remove your belongings from my house. You can't just kick me out, Colin protested. I have tenant rights. You're not a tenant. You're a house guest who's overstayed his welcome, and house guests don't have rights when they're caught having connection with the homeowner's wife. Maya was crying harder now, but I noticed she was watching me carefully, trying to gauge how far she could push. Lucas, where am I supposed to go? This is my home too. Actually, it's not. The house is in my name only, purchased before our marriage with inherited money. According to my lawyer, you have no legal claim to it. I can't believe you went to a lawyer, Maya said. I can't believe you thought I wouldn't. Dr. Reeves cleared his throat. Mr. Harper, I understand you're hurt and angry, but perhaps we could discuss some constructive solutions. Dr. Reeves, with all due respect, the only constructive solution here is for the people who betrayed me to face the consequences of their actions. Maya chose to have an affair. Colin chose to pursue a married woman. They both chose to conduct that affair in my house, under my security cameras, while lying to my face every day. Those were their choices, and now they get to live with the results. I gestured toward the open door. Everyone who doesn't live here needs to leave, now. Jenna and Tara left first, shooting me venomous looks as they passed. Dr. Reeves followed, looking professionally disappointed. Colin gathered his dignity and walked out with as much authority as he could manage. This isn't over, Lucas, he said from the doorway. You're right, I replied. It's not. Tomorrow you'll be officially terminated from Eastport Engineering. Next week you'll be served with divorce papers from Karen. And sometime next month you'll be explaining to a judge why you thought it was appropriate to conduct an affair with a subordinate's wife while living in that subordinate's house. Colin left without another word. Maya and I stood alone in our living room, looking at each other across 8 years of marriage that had just ended in the space of one conversation. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now you decide whether you want to leave voluntarily or wait for me to have you removed legally. Either way, you're not sleeping in my house tonight. Lucas, please, I know I hurt you, but we can work through this. People make mistakes. Maya, this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. You chose Colin over me, excitement over stability, lies over truth. I'm just making sure you get to live with your choice. She tried one last time, moving closer and putting her hand on my arm. I choose you, Lucas. I choose our marriage. Please don't throw away 8 years over one mistake. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the security footage, the lies, the manipulation, the way she'd looked at me that morning like I was an idiot who would never figure out what was happening in his own house. Maya, you made your choice 6 weeks ago. I'm just making mine now. I walked to the door and held it open. Goodbye, Maya. I hope Colin is worth it. She left crying, and I closed the door behind her, turned the deadbolt, and engaged the security system. Then I poured myself a bourbon and sat down to plan the final phase of my revenge. The next morning brought the kind of crisp October clarity that makes Maine famous, and I woke up in my own house, in my own bed, for the first time in months, without the weight of deception pressing down on my chest. Maya had spent the night at Jenna's apartment, based on the 17 text messages she'd sent me between midnight and 3 a.m., ranging from tearful apologies to angry demands to legal threats. I'd ignored them all. Instead, I'd spent the evening productively, creating a comprehensive digital file of evidence that would make the next phase of my plan both devastating and legally bulletproof. Screenshots, timestamps, video clips, and a detailed timeline of Maya and Colin's affair, cross-referenced with their lies and alibis. My phone rang at 7:30. Colin Reddick. Lucas, I hope I'm not calling too early. I wanted to update you on yesterday's developments. Not too early at all. What's the news? Colin came home last night around 11, packed a bag, and left again without saying where he was going. He also cleaned out our joint checking account. I'm sorry to hear that, Karen. Don't be. It just makes the divorce easier. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. She paused. I have a meeting with my lawyer this afternoon. Would you be willing to provide a sworn statement about what you witnessed? Absolutely. I have video evidence, timestamps, everything you'll need. Thank you. And Lucas? I'm sorry this happened to you too, but I'm glad we're both finding out who we married before it was too late to do something about it. After Karen hung up, I made coffee and reviewed my plan for the day. Maya worked at Brennan and Associates, a small advertising agency downtown. Her boss, Richard Brennan, was Tara's older brother and had always been protective of Maya, treating her like a favorite niece. He was also a prominent member of the local business community and had a reputation for ethical behavior that bordered on the obsessive. Colin's termination from Eastport Engineering would be finalized this morning, but he still had friends and contacts in the local construction industry. He'd probably land on his feet professionally, unless someone made sure his reputation preceded him. I had plans for both of those situations. At 9 a.m., I walked into Brennan and Associates with a manila envelope and asked to speak with Richard privately. Lucas, good to see you, Richard said, shaking my hand warmly. How's Maya? She seemed upset yesterday, said she was dealing with some personal issues. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, Richard. Maya's personal issues have become professional issues, and I thought you should know about them before they impact your business. Richard's expression grew serious. What kind of professional issues? I opened the envelope and placed a printed screenshot on his desk. Richard looked at it, blinked, looked again, and then sat down heavily in his chair. Is this Maya? Yes. And that's Colin Reddick, my former boss at Eastport Engineering. This was taken in my house 6 nights ago, while Maya was supposedly working late on the Morrison account. Richard stared at the photograph for a long moment. Lucas, I'm so sorry, I had no idea. I didn't either, until I installed security cameras and started paying attention to the lies. Richard, I need you to know that Maya's been using company resources to facilitate this affair. Late-night client meetings that never happened, expense account charges for hotels and restaurants, personal phone calls during work hours. I placed a second document on his desk. I've documented everything here. Dates, times, expenses that don't match any client activities. Richard reviewed the document with growing dismay. Some of these charges are significant, and if she's been lying about client meetings... The Morrison account presentation she gave yesterday? She prepared it during a 3-hour lunch with Colin at the Harborview Hotel. I have the credit card receipts. Richard looked up at me with something approaching horror. Lucas, why are you telling me this? You could have just divorced Maya quietly. Because Maya's spent years telling people that I'm boring, predictable, and don't appreciate her. Her friends have spent years encouraging her to find someone more exciting. Well, now she gets to find out exactly how exciting unemployment and public humiliation can be. You're destroying her career. No, Richard. Maya destroyed her own career when she decided to conduct an affair on company time with company resources, I'm just making sure you know about it before it becomes a bigger problem." Richard was quiet for a long moment, then sighed deeply. "I'll need to conduct an investigation. Maya will be suspended pending the outcome." "I understand. And Richard, you might want to review her client accounts carefully. I suspect you'll find other irregularities." I left Richard's office and drove to my next appointment, lunch with the partners at Morrison Construction, Maya's biggest client account. Tom Morrison and his brother Jake had built their company from nothing into one of the most successful construction firms in eastern Maine, and they had a reputation for straight dealing that was legendary in the industry. "Lucas, good to see you," Tom said as I joined them at their usual table at the waterfront grill. "How's the Millfield project coming?" "Ahead of schedule and under budget," I replied. "Actually, that's part of what I wanted to discuss with you. There's been a situation with the Eastport engineering management that's going to impact how we handle your account going forward." I explained Colin's termination and the reasons behind it, keeping the details professional, but making sure they understood the scope of the problem. Jake whistled low. "So your boss was screwing your wife, and your wife was charging their hotel bills to our account?" "That's the situation in a nutshell." "Jesus, Lucas, that's rough, but we appreciate you bringing it to our attention." Tom leaned forward. "What's your plan now? Are you staying with Eastport?" "Actually, I've been thinking about going independent, starting my own consulting firm. I have the experience, the certifications, and the client relationships." "Well, you'd have our business," Jake said immediately. "We've worked with you for 3 years, and you've never let us down. Can't say the same for some of the management at Eastport." By the time lunch was over, I had my first major client for Harper Engineering Consultants, which would officially launch the following Monday. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls from Maya, but I was saving those conversations for later. First, I had one more stop to make. The Anchor Inn was the kind of dive bar where construction workers, fishermen, and other blue-collar professionals gathered after work to complain about their bosses and solve the world's problems over cheap beer and expensive whiskey. It was also where Colin had been drinking since his termination, according to Nate, who'd texted me with updates throughout the day. I found Colin at the far end of the bar, working on what appeared to be his 4th or 5th bourbon. He looked up when I sat down next to him, and his expression was pure hatred. "Come to gloat?" he asked. "Actually, I came to buy you a drink. Seems like the least I can do considering you're unemployed and homeless." Colin laughed bitterly. "You really think you've won, don't you?" "I don't think I've won, Colin. I know I've won. You're fired, your wife is divorcing you, and Maya's about to be unemployed too. I'd say that's a pretty comprehensive victory." "Maya loves me," Colin said desperately. "This thing between us is real." "Maya loves the idea of you," I corrected. "She loves the excitement, the drama, the feeling of being desired by someone new. But love? Colin, Maya doesn't love anyone but herself. You're about to find that out the hard way." I ordered a bourbon and raised my glass. "Here's to new beginnings. You're going to need them." Colin stared at me with drunken fury. "You destroyed my life." "No, Colin. You destroyed your own life when you decided to pursue a married woman. I just made sure everyone found out about it." "You're going to regret this," Colin said, his words slurring slightly. "Maya and I will figure something out. We'll start over somewhere else." "With what money? You cleaned out your joint account with Karen, but that won't last long. Maya's about to lose her job, and her credit is tied to mine. You're both broke, unemployed, and unemployable in this town." Colin's face went red. "You bastard! You planned this whole thing." "I documented your affair and shared the evidence with interested parties. If that counts as planning, then yes, I planned it very carefully." Colin stood up unsteadily, and for a moment I thought he might take a swing at me. Instead, he threw a 20 on the bar and stumbled toward the door. "This isn't over," he called back. "Yes, Colin, it is." I finished my bourbon and drove home, where Maya was waiting on my front porch with 2 suitcases and a desperate expression. Lucas, please, we need to talk. About what, Maya? About how you've been fired from your job? About how Colin's wife cleaned out their accounts before he could? About how you're homeless and unemployed with no prospects? Maya's face crumpled. Richard fired me. He said I'd violated company policy and damaged client relationships. He's making me pay back the expenses I charged for personal activities. That seems fair. Lucas, I have nowhere to go. Jenna can't let me stay with her indefinitely, and I can't afford a hotel. What about Colin? I thought you two were going to start a new life together. Colin's not handling this well. He's been drinking, and he's angry, and he keeps talking about getting revenge on you. Revenge on me? I laughed. Maya, I didn't do anything to Colin except document his behavior and share the evidence with people who needed to know. If he wants revenge on someone, he should look in the mirror. Please, Lucas. I know I made mistakes, but I can't undo them. All I can do is try to make things right. I looked at her standing there with her designer suitcases and her expensive clothes, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the security footage, the lies, the way she'd looked at me like I was an idiot who would never figure out what was happening in his own house. Maya, you had 8 years to make things right. You chose to make them wrong instead. Now you get to live with the consequences. What am I supposed to do? I don't know, Maya. That's not my problem anymore. I walked past her to my front door. But I'd suggest you figure it out quickly. Winter's coming and it gets cold in Maine when you don't have anywhere to go. I went inside and locked the door, leaving Maya standing on the porch with her suitcases and her regrets. Through the window, I watched her load her bags into her car and drive away, probably back to Jenna's apartment, where she'd have to explain how her exciting new life had turned into a disaster in less than 24 hours. I poured myself another bourbon and sat down to review the day's accomplishments. Maya was unemployed and homeless. Colin was unemployed and divorced. I had a new business with a major client already lined up, and everyone in town knew exactly who the real villains were in this story. Maya had wanted excitement and passion instead of boring predictability. I'd given her more excitement than she could handle, and I was just getting started.